So welcome, all who are here and all who may join in the future. Or maybe you're watching from the future. Hello. It's a dreary spring day. I am Sarah Williams, and I am a collaborative network consultant with Jackson Collaborative Network. And we'll do quick introductions. Amy, you want to take it from here?
Yes, I am Amy Forbes. I'm also a consultant with the Jackson Collaborative Network, and I have to apologize ahead of time. I need to scoot out of the meeting at around 11:50. So I apologize in advance, but I'm happy to be here and excited to see you all.
I'm Angie Guadagnini. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services. I sit in a lot of these meetings, so.
Glad to see you.
I'm Ryan Smith. I am the Government and Community Relations Manager with the Jackson Area Transportation Authority.
I'm Rebecca Calkins, and I am Community Project Coordinator with Drug Free Jackson, and most teens don't.
I am Jeanette Lamphere, and I'm with the Jackson County Health Department and the Empowering Youth Today program.
Great, thanks for being here. Now we have some people who have been to one or more affinity groups. Some people could introduce the affinity groups for us, and some that are newer. So we will run through some slides, some intro slides, and then really the meat, the MEAT, the heaviness or the important things that happen in these meetings are the connections, and where we hear what all of you are doing around the root cause of inequitable policies and practices. So I will share a screen. Let's see if I'll share a screen. Perhaps here. So here's where we start. We already did welcome and introductions. And this is just a quick description of the groups we have. We have 3 affinity groups currently with an option to add 1 or more this year, depending on the needs that people say, that they tell us, because the goal is that we are supporting community partners in the way that makes sense for you all. So these groups, this one centers around partners that are trying to make policies and practices more equitable. You'll hear us talk a lot about data, because if you say, yes, I'm doing this, we're going to say, well, why are you doing it? And how do you know? So this is a quick description of the group, and a highlighting on focusing on community members that are closest to the problem. And then our role, Amy and myself, are the consultants. We're just here to kind of facilitate, help connect, but really the conversations and the richness of these meetings are dependent on you all showing up and contributing. Amy, feel free to jump in if I forget anything.
No, you've got it covered. Yeah, it's really just kind of a space to gather. We've talked a lot about root causes, and the community has identified really 14 that are really causing barriers for folks in our community. So as Sarah mentioned, there are 3 affinity groups: the Building Trust, the Navigating Service Systems, and then this one is about inequitable practices and policies. So yeah, it's we're kind of excited to gather on these things, and ultimately the goal would be to move into actions in organizations to address some of these things. So it's great to kind of come together and talk about how difficult it is to really get to these root causes and the data, and better understanding kind of experiences, and then kind of developing actions within organizations to kind of address these and move forward. So yeah.
There's a good example later. I was hoping Marcus could join us today, because there's something he brought up at our last affinity group, and that we're going to help him craft an action plan around. But regardless of if he's here, we'll just talk about it. So this is just a quick, we have a quick goals, like hopefully by you attending, you will gain knowledge around how programs can lead to systems change. They don't always, but hopefully with the help and support we can get there. Lots of focus on connecting you all without us or with our help, with the help of partner profiles, which is It's my lead in to our next slide. And then building trusting relationships with people in this group and hopefully with us. And then we will always talk about tracking and measuring progress so that we can show that things are working or are not, and then we can adjust accordingly. We always stop here just as group norms, like as a reminder, we want to create a space where people feel comfortable posing questions, putting ideas on the table. If Rebecca says, I'm doing this intervention and it's because we've done it for 50 years, I might say, Rebecca, have you considered doing anything else? Or why would you do that? Like we hope that this space is a space where we can presume positive intent, but also have authentic questions. And because we also want to share successes and challenges with each other. Like, oh, this worked for you? Or like, oh yeah, I contacted Jim at the city. Don't contact him. It was worthless. Go to this person instead. So that's what we hope.
I hope Jim doesn't hear about that.
I know. Well, don't tell him about this recording. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to this earlier because I'm always about action. I'm always about like, well, how is this affected? So the kind of one of the intents of the network is to kind of have a community dashboard. So we know that there are all these issues in our community. We know that there are multiple people in multiple organizations working to address them, but do we know if it's working and how do we know that? So some of the ways we can really track and measure that progress is building partner profiles. So that is in our information hub. It's also through our website. This is just a screenshot of that. And it is basically talking about who you are, what organization you're working with, and then what you're doing in the community. So if you're really focused on building trust or really addressing inequitable policies or practices in your organization, or the system change work column is really like, these are the things that we're trying to do, and this is the way we're trying to do it. And then by attaching it to a root cause, we talked about those 14 root causes. By attaching it to that, we can then have a dashboard, which is really cool. It's like, those pie charts where it says we have, 11 members who are really working around inequitable practices and policies in their organizations. And those 11 people that you might see pop up in that pie, you can connect with those people. You can say, hey, what did you do? How did you know this was an issue? What kind of interventions did you do? Were they successful? So the partner profile is key to connections, but it's also key to letting us know really where there's momentum in organizations. So that is how we started these affinity groups. We saw that the majority of people that built their profile were building them around these root causes. So the 3 that we've got going, if we find out that there's another root cause, maybe about cost of services or about, different things, we'll kind of bring people together around that. It's really kind of making those connections and building on each other's strengths and barriers that people have encountered. So that's kind of the key to partner profiles.
I was gonna say, it also is a public facing page. So if you enter your information in, we publish it on the back end, but this link that we provided, like any of you can go in and see all of this information, and it's public. So without even contacting us, say for example, Ryan's like, oh, I actually am working on a lack of trust, and I didn't realize that Terry at Center for Health is doing something similar. And so connections can happen without us also, which is ideal, that you're all connecting. So we're trying to provide a space also that is public, and the email is listed, and it's kind of permission for you all to connect and encouragement without us.
So then, so these are kind of the key elements to kind of getting actionable in your organization. So the partner profiles is really helpful. And then engaging in affinity groups, this is why you're all here. So we can kind of connect with each other and talk about what's going on in your organizations and see what's happening in each other's. And then ideally you would create action plans. We don't want to make more work for you, but we also know that kind of writing it down and working through it is really helpful in a lot of cases. We know even some organizations have like strategic plans, right? So they are already addressed in your organization. But it's also a way that if it is around inequitable practices and policies and it's in your strategic plan, you can kind of connect with us and we can morph that into an action plan that shows the rest of the community that, actually, my organization has this in their strategic plan. This is what we're doing around it. Sarah and I can assist with both developing that and enhancing that. So if you've got a CEO that says, I want you to do A, B, and C, and you bring it to us and we'd be like, did you think about this? What does the data show? Did you disaggregate that data so that those that are really most impacted by these barriers have the assistance that they need, or have that you're looking at that particular population? But we can both assist you in doing that, but you can do it on your own. You can forward us your work. We can kind of work through that. But that again builds into that dashboard that shows that we are making progress on these. We talk about, there is tons of great work that's happening, and it's very siloed often across even organizations and even sectors. So people are doing it in an education sector and are doing it in the health sector, not being connected. So this kind of lets us know that there are 15 people that have an actual action plan with steps that they're going through to address it. And then that will bring into the tracking and reporting progress, so we know we're moving the needle. And then reporting that both in updating your action plans. So you say, I did A, B, and C, this worked, this didn't, so I'm going to do D. That's helpful. And also just kind of chit-chatting in these type of groups to say, I'm stuck, and your colleagues can say, I got stuck too, this is what I did. So Sarah and I try to take a background in these discussions, because you guys are the ones doing the work. You guys are the ones making the difference. You guys are the ones connecting with people. But we are here to kind of help walk through it. Any questions on any of those, or? All right.
So this is our place to land first. It's a little bit not visually appealing, but such is the work we do. This is just messy but good. That's like, so the last time we met, I took some very unofficial notes on what people had shared, and then maybe some conversation that happened around it. This one was, I had to kind of break into two on some things people were doing. This is honestly just snapshots. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight was that Marcus Gill is at the Jackson County ISD, and he mentioned that one of the things he noticed is that there were some students of color that were not completing the program at a disproportionate rate compared to white students. And I love that he brought it up in the affinity group, because the affinity group, if you're not familiar with it, I feel like it can feel like you need to come with all of your plan and your everything. And actually you don't. You just come with an idea or a problem or something that's happening, and how can we work through it together? Or how can we, maybe something like this has happened in another program, I would imagine, probably. And so people can share their strengths, they can share their lessons. And also, we are now going to set up an appointment with Marcus to create an action plan and figure out why this is happening, right? Because there has to be a why. So we have data to show that white students are completing the program higher. So is it transportation? Is it racist teachers? Is it whatever, right? So there will be a reason. And so there has to be a process in place where we figure out why this is happening, so that then we can figure out an appropriate intervention. So yeah, that was, I thought, something kind of cool that came out last time we met, and it will lead to an action plan or a meeting with Amy and me and Marcus to figure out like a very personal, like, how can we help support you in this? Here's an action plan. Do you need help around like figuring out the next step? Like, have you talked to young people who aren't finishing student? Have you talked to the students who are currently in class? Like, maybe they have some insight, just some like thought partnership around that.
Just to build on that too, when we talk about the whys, we that's our kind of our favorite favorite thing. Well, how do you know and why? Everything that we do in the work that we do is centered around engagement, and it's authentic engagement. So it's just, oh, you don't have to bump there. But this is kind of
late.
one of the yes, you're speedy.
I am.
One of the models that we use is really this is the action plan process. This is kind of how we we walk through. We start with, like Sarah said, just bring a problem. Like, hey, I noticed this, and this is a problem because it leads to disparate outcomes. We kind of walk through and narrow down, but in all of the steps that we do and really understanding the why, it is like engaging, and especially engaging with those that are closest to the problem, because for years we have sat around tables and decided that we know best and made assumptions about problems. And we have a bunch of middle-aged white people in a room going, this is we're going to do this. I know what you're going to do. You're going to build a scholarship. And without really understanding why they're not completing the problem, the coursework or whatever it might be. Everything is centered around building those relationships with people experiencing problems, really kind of better understanding their circumstances and their perspectives. So I just wanted to touch on that, because we do a lot of the whys, we make a lot of assumptions. When Marcus, stated that problem statement, we were all quick to say, oh, it's probably because they don't have enough money. It's probably because they don't have transportation. It's probably, we're making all these assumptions, and we will challenge you all to go, whoa, like, we want to know what's best, and we want to have solutions where most of us do the work we do because we are fixers. We want to better our community and the lives of people in our community. And we will challenge everyone to step back and really gain that authentic understanding of what they're experiencing. So, sorry. I
No,
jumped
that's
ahead
great.
like 15 slides.
You did. How dare you? Well, and I think like to just look at this, it looks kind of, I don't know, intimidating is the right word, but it feels like, yeah, but to actually just talk about it, it's, very conversational, and this is kind of the framework we use. We may not say, now move to the next bubble, but like, this is what we use.
There are lots of different frameworks too, so it doesn't have to follow that per se, but we found it helpful.
So I am pretty good at taking Padlet notes. So what we have an option, and when we started doing the affinity groups, we were like, hey, everyone, go to Padlet and enter in your own thing. And then it kind of just turned into a conversation where I took notes. So that is what we have been doing. So that's what we'll do. How about that? I will go here and I'll jump over to Padlet if I can. Let's see how many tabs I have open. Too many. Okay, hold. Don't worry, guys, totally under control, all of it.
Why am I skeptical?
Yeah, you should be, because you know me. And so this is just a way for us to capture any updates you might have, things that you may have updates since the last time we met, something that has just emerged, an idea you might have you want to tackle or talk about. It's really super broad intentionally, because we're hoping also that whatever you talk about, others might have thoughts as well. So I'm happy to, I need to remember that I'm screen sharing. All right. Yeah, and so then whatever you all share, I will capture, and then we'll have a way to take ad hoc notes. But does anyone want to share like an update or challenge, success, something you're working on related to this?
Well, we're over here, we're continuously trying to eliminate barriers to transportation for everybody, sometimes it's an outreach issue. Sometimes what we're finding actually more and more here lately, it's capacity issues, because we have such a difficult time finding drivers, and we're kind of caught in a catch-22. So the way things work is we'll get folks that want to get rides, but we don't have enough drivers to support those rides. At the same time, we don't have those drivers, partly because it's difficult to get drivers hired, and they just came out with new rules starting back in February 7th to made it so much more difficult to get a CDL. I don't know if anybody knows about that or has heard anything about that, but it is incredibly difficult now to get a CDL, because if you did not have your training permit prior to February 7th, you have to go through an entire school now, which is books and, which is book coursework and stuff. And then I get it, it's a safety thing. And they want people to be well-trained before they go behind the wheel. But it's like coursework, and it's, obviously, on the road training and range training on the vehicle that you're going to be driving. So, and it's very cost prohibitive because it's expensive to go through those schools. The estimates I heard are between $3,000 and $4,000
Wow.
to go through those schools. So they made it really difficult for us to be able to hire drivers. So we have a lack of drivers, right? And so we can't support trips. At the same time, not only is it difficult to get drivers hired because of the CDL issue, but we also don't have enough trips to support hiring more drivers, because our big challenge is not necessarily capital expenditure for getting the equipment and stuff that we need to provide those rides. It's operational expenses, and that's where we run into a problem. There's a very fine balance between, okay, do we have enough drivers to support the trips we need, or do we have enough trips to support the drivers that we require? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one data has to support the other, right? And like, how do you, yeah. Because if you don't have drivers, then you're not making trips to show that you need drivers, right?
Correct. Right. Exactly. It's very much a catch-22 in this situation.
When did that new rule go into place?
It was for anybody that was trying to get their CDL after February 7th. So there's been, from what I understand, and I'm not up to speed on this entirely, but I guess there's been some discussions with Michigan Works, and at least in some of the other Michigan Works offices throughout the state. We had a meeting with some of the other transit agencies a couple of weeks ago, and they were discussing that some of them had some agreements with their Michigan Works offices and stuff. So we're just kind of trying to figure that out.
Michigan Works in kind of recruiting drivers, or in helping with the cost of it, or?
Well, from what I understood, from what they were saying, is they were there was some like cooperative arrangement with Michigan Works where they were assisting with providing for the cost of, because they've got some grants or some funding, I guess, that will help with training for people who are unemployed and who want to get into different careers and do whatever. So they were assisting with the paying of like the book or the classroom portion of the training. And then they were there was some other agreement with the transit agency, actually, who, as it happened, they were registered as a third-party trainer, or as a training, facility, and then they were paying that organization to do that. But we're not set up like that yet.
I was going to say, how do you get to the point where that could be? So it sounds like that's at least like in the works, maybe in the Michigan Works, to talk with them, and to me, like, I don't know how different like transit agency works or work, but would there be something like, is there a pool of CDL drivers already somewhere else, right? Like that you could partner or like contract, that might not be the right word, but like get them a different way.
Yeah, that's the trick, is we don't hire contractors to do or to operate our vehicles. I mean, they're employees or they're not. So that's been the policy forever. It's a little bit dogmatic, you know what I mean? Maybe things need to be looked at a little differently, but at this point in time, it's, that's a policy that's probably not going to change.
Is that a federal or state policy, or just a
Jada.
Because I mean, I'm just curious because there's so often we have like reverted to like, that's just what happens. I mean, which is the reason this group kind of exists, like to kind of challenge or really look into that. I can't tell you how many people, when we've had discussions around policies or practices, that they've gone back and looked it up and really researched it and found out that it's actually just a practice, not necessarily a policy. And are there ways to get around that, I wonder?
I'd have to dig a little bit deeper and find out. I don't know if I've ever seen anything written in policy that says that we won't use contractors, but at the same time, because of the nature of our organization, and I think it's a very sticky situation as far as being able to do something like that. We can contract with a third party organization, and there's actually funding to do that, but it's not like hiring like a school bus driver, say for instance, and contracting them to come in and do a run for us. You know what I mean? And then issuing them a 1099 at the end of the year or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be interesting just to look into that. And I know, and that's the problem so often when we run into these is like, Ryan, I'm sure you're crazy busy during the day. So who's got time to like dig back in and find out if the way your organization kind of brings on drivers, is it just kind of status quo and that's what you've always done? Or is there opportunity to be creative in the way that you're recruiting or utilizing current license holders? And, you know, like it's so much of this is just having, you know, finding the time to commit
Right.
to like kind of digging into those alternative options.
Yeah, one of the things that I know that would probably be a sticking point as far as being able to do something like that is the fact that we are a union shop. So our drivers are part of a union. And so there's
going to be kickback on pretty much any alternate.
Right. Yeah, it would definitely be something that would end up being a contract issue as far as that's concerned, if we wanted to do something like that, or if we had to amend our policies or our procedures as far as bringing like independent contractors on. The union would definitely have something to say about that. I can guarantee it.
Well, and that, I think that brings up a good point too. So, because obviously all of these things are like, what is the problem or what is the issue? And then what are the things we can or can't control, right? So, excuse me, I don't know if that policy can change, but like, it sounds to me like there's at least a little wiggle room or some creativity around partnering with maybe Michigan Works, or if the barrier is cost, like is that the barrier, the highest one? So like, okay, it sounds like Michigan Works, at least in other parts of the state, right? Like have helped with that. It seems like that would be a great partnership, especially because if there are unemployed or underemployed people that are trying to find work and you want to give them work, like if cost is if that's the only barrier, then it seems like that would be a great partnership, a great opportunity to at least start. I mean, obviously feels like there are like 9 barriers like in every situation, right? But like that could be at least a great place. So do you have that on, I don't even know if that's in your scope of to-dos, but is that like on your like next steps piece around the Michigan Works local?
Yeah, that's always something that we that's a constant conversation around here amongst senior staff, just because because it's a big issue.
And that kind of compels me to even think about partnerships around, because I know that there are folks in the education field that are working to promote like licensing and secondary degrees and things like that. That is one of the indicators that we have with our shared measures on like helping individuals with certain licensing or secondary education degrees, things like that. So it just kind of, my brain is like clicking through thinking like, are there opportunities to partner with even folks in the education field that are trying to increase the percent of Jackson County residents who have that, you know, specialized licensing or even different degrees.
Right.
So I'm going to keep thinking about that.
Okay.
Do you know what that is? I don't know if we're thinking about the same thing, Amy, but like, it's not under trades, is it?
It encompasses trades. I think it is specialized trades licensing or secondary degrees. I'm not sure, but it is one of the measures that we look at in Jackson County to see if we can increase that percentage of Jackson County residents that have that specialized, or I don't know the wording around it, but I
Okay.
do know it's an indicator. And so there might be opportunity for folks that are working in that realm to connect you with, to say, okay, and I don't know if it's economic opportunity or just partnerships with career center students or high school students that are looking to advance that or to get certifications or specialized licensing. I don't know. My brain's always looking at those connections. So I'll think on it. How about other folks that have joined us today? Are there things that you're doing around inequitable policies or practices? Are there things that you're stuck on, problem statements that you're like, I've noticed this and I don't know what to do about it, or I'm working on this and I'm stuck? Or
So we've talked about our new initiative in Jackson, where we are working with families in identifying how they identify themselves, whether they identify themselves as African American, do they identify themselves as Native American, and then working within how they identify themselves. Zoe has reported a couple times to a couple different groups that she has randomly gone into the system, and the whole purpose of that was to update the information in our computer system so that we know that we have correct information for families. And we're piloting it in Jackson, where it's not anything that Lansing is driving or anything, but because we want to do what's best for our families. And the staff are reporting pretty good interaction with families, really good engagement, that families are appreciative of us recognizing that that heritage and culture that they hold. So specifically for those families that maybe don't meet our federal criteria to be Native American, they don't have that that blood link. I don't remember what it's called, but they're not related blood wise. They don't have enough, but they raised with a grandparent or somebody who does is part of that tribe and is practicing some of those cultural celebrations and such. So we want to recognize that, and the staff are really having some really good conversations. I just wanted to bring that back, because we've talked about some of the things that we're doing and how is it making a difference. And is it making a difference? So I'm not data driven like you and like Sarah and Amy are. But I recognize when our staff are saying that the families are appreciative of us even asking the question and not making assumptions based on the color of my skin or based on my last name or things like that, that they're actually asking the families.
that's amazing. I
Yeah,
also will
it
tell
is.
you, data-driven is both qualitative and quantitative. So there
Yes,
are,
and this is
so
qualitative.
that is
yes.
data, that is data, that is
Yes.
important data, and hearing
Yep.
from folks and engaging with them and understanding whether or not it means anything is important. So.
Yeah. So I have a question for this group, and maybe just for Sarah and Amy in these affinity groups, is we are seeing a lot of work with lived experience. So that have lived experience in the various areas that we are working in. And I'm wondering, have we reached out, or have you reached out to the community to ask people to be part of these affinity groups that have that lived experience that can offer some insight to those of us that are doing the work and how to do it better?
So so yes, some, right? So like
Okay.
the point of the network and the point of the affinity groups is that we're gathering together people that are in organizations to help move the needle on big issues.
Yeah.
So of course we always want authentic input, et cetera,
Yeah.
but we're actually going to be asking you if you've engaged people that are closest to the problem while you're
Okay.
doing this work. So
Okay.
Amy and I, and you were a part of our group as well that administered the funding to really
Yeah.
have like
Yep.
this lens of we're here to facilitate and guide and help ask questions of the work you all are doing in your organizations to reduce the inequities in policies and practices. So we serve as support for you all, and you all are doing the work that should be engaging those closest to the problem.
We also, I mean, anyone, these groups are open to anyone who wants to attend. The more the merrier for us. And I do think having different perspectives in these groups is helpful. But we also can provide tools. So like part of our role is if you come to us and you say, okay, folks, clients at DHHS don't feel like that we are honoring their identity or whatever. I know you guys are already tackling that one. But if there is something that you want and you say, we're finding a disproportionately low number of Black and brown folks who are applying for this particular program, we would be able to like work with you to assist you with tools to get really authentic feedback from the community. So much of that, first of all, is like building relationships. So it might be a practice that you're already doing, right? So you're already engaging with your families differently in the way that you're approaching their identity. That is a relationship building piece. That is a trust building piece. They are going to say, wow, they actually care about me and they respect me as an individual. You're going to get better feedback. So right there, that's one piece of better understanding. But there are often tools that it might be like a photo voice where you give some, an opportunity for people, some of your clients to just take pictures of around a particular thing in their community of what they're seeing, right? So if you say, I don't know, or even like a community wall where you actually put a problem statement up and you say, Black and brown folks in our community are not utilizing this program in our thing. Why? And you give people an anonymous opportunity to write, it's because you guys are rude, or it is because I can't get in the building after hours and I work third shift. Or so there's tools that we can help provide for folks that might help you better understand barriers that folks are encountering. But yeah, anyone's welcome at these affinity groups. But Sarah and I aren't unfortunately doing the work. We're helping facilitate the work that's being done. There's pieces of me that it's like, I really want to get in the trenches and actually be doing the work. But we kind of have that backbone role that helps encourage you to do the work and do it, authentically and hearing community voice and things like that. That makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you.
I have a question about that, Angie, too, as you're talking about, I think that's so incredible, right? That there's a spot in a system where whatever it looks like, families are identifying this field, and it likely could be different than the things they qualify for, right? Like, and if and I know we're using the Native American or American Indian, like, example, there could be others, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's like just one thing that could be, but that's interesting to me too, and important, right? How they are referred to, how they are addressed, how they are recognized, and also that could be in contradiction with policy or what the policy says about how to support them.
And what we found too, one of our staff, and God bless her, the issue was alcoholism. Mom and dad were just really struggling with this addiction, and we're telling them they need to go to AA, they need to, do all these things, and they won't go. And after some time, the worker is just really trying to understand why, and they're Native American, they identify as Native American, and they don't believe in the higher power that the AA programs use. So that was why they didn't go to that program. So then the worker had to be more creative, and let's figure out something else that to support you in sobriety. So just something just simple like that we wouldn't even think about and in general every day, we just wouldn't even think about. But this family that was their barrier, that they don't believe in this higher power that AA really stresses. So recognizing that helped that family be successful, because the worker was able to help them figure out other supports that they can utilize that aren't based on that faith in a higher power. So, but the Native American too is one that we have federal requirements for children who are of Native American heritage and whose parents are of Native American heritage. And if they don't meet the federal criteria, we don't have to follow those protocols. However, is that best for the family? You know, we're recognizing that and taking some lead in the state about identifying those folks, and not just Native American. That's a big one where, you know, we have additional requirements, but asking families how they identify. It's just been really good conversations. From what I've heard reported, those conversations have gone really well.
I love that. It's super messy.
It is messy. It is messy. And what we found in our system, you know, we have that race in our system: white, black, Native American, Pacific Islander. I mean, we have all of those. And we tend to just kind of look at the person and say, oh, that's a white man, or oh, that's a Latina, or without asking them, how do they identify? Because do they identify as a white person if they're a race? Do they? If they are Native American, maybe they do identify as a white person because they didn't grow up with that grandmother or aunt and uncle that followed the Native American traditions. But we're trying to recognize that and meet them. It's helping our staff meet them where they are.
Well, I love that, Angie. And also I would argue that can be carried into every setting in life too, right? Because like, as you're talking about not making assumptions based on, and we've talked about this a million times, that we're like conditioned to do that. We are conditioned to be, even when it comes, I think about like gender and gender expression, and like, I'm going to assume someone with like short hair and pants is like a boy, you know, like there are so many things that I feel like have to be challenged, have to be relearned. And one of them too is like, based on the color of your skin, what assumptions I make about you. And so I love the fact that, like, let's start from scratch. Please tell me how to best support you and identify, right? Like, to me, that's like, what pronouns do you use? What, like you said, maybe there's like a religious piece, right? When you support people, maybe some people want faith-based services, some don't. And it's for sure, along with ethnicity and with culture comes beliefs, and like, not assuming I know any of that because you're wearing a thing or because you're speaking a language. Or I think it's such a good reminder, because even, I mean, I'm a social worker and I still find myself checking. I'm like, oh, right. I got to like check that, you know? I think that's so important.
I've been to a lot of conferences too about Native Americans in recovery, that, you know, breakout sessions about those kind of things. And it is really interesting that they do actually want faith-based, but their faith, not not the higher power stuff. And community-based and land-based and all of these things. And yeah, it's really interesting that that's few and far between if you're not on the reservation. And I was thinking too, Hillman New Vision has a lot of alternative pathways. So it's not just AANA higher power stuff. They do a really good job.
That's who the worker referred them to. And they have the peer supports, and they have so many wonderful programs over there. So
Oh, that's good to know. I did not know that.
It's a common thing. They don't want to talk about higher power. And so what are the groups that still support you in your recovery?
I love that.
That's a common thing through so many things in the folks that things, community members are experiencing. It's got to be customized to the person. You know what I mean? It's not, we can't have a one size fits all approach to anything. right, to any of the interactions.
Mhm.
And that is, that
Mhm.
boils down back to that engagement piece, like better understanding what each individual needs is the only way we're going to be at best supporting individuals when you kind of get down to it, build that relationship and understand those things.
Yeah.
Anybody else
great.
that joined us that wants to just kind of touch, either update, talk through something, having experiences with something?
I just wanted to share that I've only been in my role for about 6 weeks now. So to share about problems that we're having or, situations that we're addressing, I'm just really, that's all coming to light. So I'm really here today to get a sense for your group and what you do and how you go about doing it and how we would engage with you. But I'm just not in a position yet to be able to to share specifics or bring problems forward. But I am really appreciating the opportunity to just listen and understand how best I can connect with this group and the work that we're doing over here with 10 to 15-year-olds in the Empowering Youth Today program.
I was actually going to ask Jeanette if because this is the first time I think I've met you. I would, totally understandable that you're still getting your bearings and all of that. We wouldn't, whatever you feel comfortable with. But tell me about, like, if I don't know about the program, what would be the description you would give?
Sure. Well, the Empowering Youth Today program years ago used to be called the Abstinence program. And so now putting a much more positive spin, instead of saying, looking at 10 to 15-year-old population and say, you shouldn't this, this, and this, it's broadened into talking about what are the barriers out there to you being all that you possibly can be, to be able to help from a very positive reinforcement standpoint, come in and be able to deliver that message to students that say you were created with a purpose. Our community needs you. You have important contributions to make. And we care about your future, and we want to do all that we can to help you be all that you can. But between here and there are barriers that are going to come up. And what might be those barriers to you being able to be the greatest version of you that you can be? And can we give you skills to build around those barriers? So, barriers like drug abuse and, teenage pregnancy and gang violence, and on it goes. And so we do a lot of skill building around those areas that teens are struggling with. And we primarily work in Jackson Public Schools. And again, our target audience is 10 to 15-year-olds. And so we do work around puberty education, trying to help people address myths and misnomers, but then way beyond, just strictly being a puberty education program. It broadens. And in fact, I have a wonderful colleague that's just developed a after school program now that's called the BOSS program. And BOSS is an acronym that says built on self-success. And so trying to help students learn new skills and be able to turn that into more of a project orientation. So for example, like for the rest of the school year, they've arranged to have guest speakers come in, and they're talking about conflict resolution, and at an age appropriate level. And we have a summer program as well called Get Real, and that reaches out to, again, that 10 to 15-year-old population. And that has a big community service learning component into it. So they'll come for 3 days a week for about 5 hours a day, and we feed them lunch. And 1 day a week, it's a lot of programming, again, from our curriculum that's built in a very fun and interactive manner. And then they have 1 day a week, they go out into the community and they serve. So giving them those types of experiences, and then 1 day a week that we go on field trips and work at getting kids out to have experiences that they otherwise would not have. So again, so as we ask them as they age to think outside the box, we've actually shown them at least a little slice of what outside the box looks like, getting them outside of their neighborhood. And getting them to, you know, experiences that they would otherwise probably not be having.
Wow, that's a lot. That's
Good
great.
stuff.
So there's my extended elevator speech.
Now that's great.
Now it's amazing.
That's super
And-
helpful for us too, because, you know, like, I mean, I saw Rebecca nodding, so I'll just go ahead and assume that she either knows about the program or you all have already partnered together, but Rebecca was nodding.
Ariana, her colleague Ariana comes to Drug Free Jackson. So
Yeah, okay, so you know Ariana. Yeah, great, wonderful. Yeah, she is part of Drug Free Jackson. So yeah, great, wonderful. And we have a sister program, the TOPS program, and their focus is on teenagers. And again, their message is more in the order of prevention than abstinence.
And does the Empowering Youth Today, is that just in a health class environment, or where?
Predominantly, yes, in health class, especially over at Parkside, but we're also working with fifth graders as well. So that would be in that health component of their school day. So that's a little bit about who we are, and then give me a few months and I'll come forward with challenges and struggles.
Seems fair.
Yeah.
You have in there 18. Since when did you?
Anyone else have any thoughts on things you're working on regarding inequitable policies or practices, or some challenges that may have come up, or things you want to ask other group members?
I have nothing new from last time, so.
Fair. And we hope too, and I mean, hopefully you all, we said in the beginning too, it all depends on who comes to these, you know, and certainly we find a lot of value in them. It's a little bit difficult in the Zoom world. We keep saying that too. And like, we have, you know, probably mixed messages about, officially we can't host in-person meetings, but we can attend them in different spots. So maybe there will be a time when we can meet in person and gather a little more, maybe momentum. I don't know. It's tough. And also now people are used to Zoom meetings and it's hard to commit to in-person meetings. But I feel like these conversations are rich, and depending on who comes, lots of connections are made. Sometimes we'll get some action planning going. We mentioned that earlier. And also we can, like, maybe like Jeanette in 2 weeks, maybe even before the next time we meet, you reach out and say like, actually this thing came up, can you connect me to someone? Or, you know, lots of potential and possibilities. Anyone else have any thoughts? I'll jump back to the slides. If not, and we'll cruise on through. We can always come back to that too. Let's see. We'll jump through these. This is just a quick stop at the action planning that we mentioned earlier. If any of you decide that, like Ryan's like, actually, I do want to like put in an action plan and figure out how we can alleviate this problem of not enough drivers or whatever. we can like work with any of you individually. And not that we're the experts, but I am really good at connecting and I'm really good at investigating who knows what. So, and I'm always happy to say I don't know the answer to something as well. So these are just the questions we walk through at action planning. What is going on? How do you know what's happening? What data do you have to support it? And then how do you know you'll be successful? Like you will have more drivers apply. You will have more riders that need, these are the things that like, how will you know if you're successful in this thing? We already brought that up earlier. The action planning process, we use that for everything. We can stop there another day. That's how to change people's mindsets. That's like the ultimate goal always, and the hardest thing ever. And then this is the 14 root causes that Amy mentioned earlier. This is the what community partners said that they were working on. These big root issues. Community members have skills and assets and agency to get their needs met. Organizations and providers are communicating with community members. So these are the things that we hope to gather people around and also to move the needle on. The next time we meet will be Thursday, April 28th. It's the fourth Thursday of every month. Ryan brings up a good point. He emailed yesterday. We can put you on the recurring calendar invite if you would like. So every month it'll just be on your calendar if you'd like. We don't like to force this on people if you don't want it, but this is an offering. We send out an e-newsletter that has all the upcoming things. We have a website that has all the upcoming things, and then we send a last minute reminder. So if you would like to be a part of the recurring monthly invite on your calendar, please let me know. I'm happy to do that. And then also the offer stands for our other affinity groups. So we meet around trying to make service systems easier to navigate. We have a lot of people in different sectors, education and health and child welfare, trying to figure out how to make service systems easier to navigate. We meet on the, I think, second Tuesday. And then the Building Trust Affinity Group meets on the third Wednesday. So the link down there, I'll also send you an email and it will have a link to our website as well, where you can see the upcoming events, you can register for them, and then you can just reply to my email if you'd like to be put on like the recurring, like if you say, I would like to be on Building Trust monthly group, I'm happy to just add you to the calendar. And then I put just like a little, this is not a fancy slide, but it kind of ties into what we were saying before about if there are upcoming in-person opportunities that you would like to invite us to, or maybe there's a group meeting that you're hosting, maybe you like to have coffee, maybe you like to have lunch. We're starting to dip our toes into meeting with people, or there's a lot of things that feel like we have, and I don't want to pretend that the pandemic is over, but it feels like there's a window for us to meet if you all are comfortable. We would love to be involved, and we would love to hear and see what's happening in the community, and just helps us with connections and relationships. And then just a page on how to get a hold of us. I'll also send you an email, which will have my email on it. You can just hit reply if you'd like, but please feel free to reach out with any question. Doesn't matter if it's formal or not. We love hearing from people and learning about the work you're doing. And feel free to ask any questions if they come up later. And that's all I have for today. Anything else before we sign off? Last call. Last call.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that there's going to be a summit on violence.
On April 8th, Freddie, I saw that and I registered.
Okay, so I don't know if you have the registration. If you want to share that, I can put it in the chat if you want me to.
I would love it.
And
If you have a link, I think that would be great if you could put it in the chat.
Yeah, I can do that. So I can do that. So the prosecutor, you have the city police department, Jackson County. It's a collaboration of a whole lot of people. So it seems like it's going to be a big thing. Which violence is huge in the city, of course, for everywhere, but in the city. And I just want to, I put that in the chat, and that way, if you have any interest, if you want to register, it's from 8:30 to 3. It's a Friday, April the 8th. So it's an all-day event. There's a lot of information coming out. The city, we committed to some commissions to do a lot of different things with violence, gun violence. So I think it's a great time, opportunity. So just like to just remind you about that, and I'll stick it in the chat.
Thank you. That's great. And I think someone forwarded me the flyer. So if for some reason, like the chat doesn't work or whatever, I'm happy to forward the flyer on of what I received. So it's not a network thing, just like clarifying that, but I got it from someone else. And since Freddie suggested it, I feel I can just forward it on to you all as well. Oh, perfect.
I'm going to.
Awesome. I feel like there'll be a lot of people there that we know, and I look forward to hearing the conversation and being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, it should be big. I hope to see a lot of people there. It's going to be a lot of plans going into it. So it's just something, I don't talk a lot at this meeting. I just like to listen what's going on. But I know you connected me with Ryan. And we talked yesterday, and I have to give him another call back about some things going on. But there's a lot of good information. I like the feedback I get, and it just helps me to, when I have my ward meetings, neighborhood meetings, and eventually you will get an invite to come and talk to the meeting. So just probably in the next couple months, you should hear something. But I just that's why I joined this. Well, listen to the group. I ain't joining, but be part of the group. So it's a lot of good information. A lot of things that's going on now. We dealing with in the city, and a lot of commission, a lot of things we have working to be going on. It's a lot of information that's out there, and it's some that's not getting out to the right places. So it just helped me and some other groups to help pass on the information. So I just appreciate everything that you're doing. And I know I don't talk a lot because I won't talk a lot, but I thank you again.
Thanks, Freddie. Also, I'm happy to hear that you and Ryan connected. That was my next email. Is going to be like, did this happen? Are we good here? Can I bow out? So glad to hear. Thanks for that, Ryan. Anyone else? That's great. That's a great before we leave thing. And Freddie put the link in the chat. And I will send an email out with all the links and how to find us and very rough notes from today as well. So thank you for joining us. Good to see you all, new and existing faces, and hope to see you all again soon.
See you. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye now.